Good morning. Welcome to Cedars Unitarian Universalist Church. We're so happy that you are joining us today. My name is Penny Brewer. I'm one of the worship associates here at Cedars. This is my last service as part of the worship committee, and I have felt so honored to be able to share my life in this way. Today, we are so happy to introduce Reverend Amanda Aikman as our guest minister, and she will be talking about happiness, and she will be leading our service and supporting our spiritual journey. We have a very special relationship with Reverend Amanda. During an 8-month period when we were a lay-led community, she provided one service a month, and she also offered her counsel and support as we learned how to be a lay-led ministry, supporting our community and supporting shared ministry. So we're so happy that she is with us today. Before we start, we do want to acknowledge that members of our congregation occupy the ancestral and traditional contemporary lands of the Coast Salish tribes, the Suquamish, the S'Klallam, the Chimicum, and the Duwamish tribes were ceded under duress through the Point Elliott and Point No Point treaties. We are grateful guests on these lands and a firm acknowledgement of indigenous sovereignty, both past and present. This acknowledgement does not substitute for the need to build authentic relationships with modern-day members of these tribes and learn about their culture and history. And so with this in mind, I do hope that all of you have an opportunity to sign up for the wonderful program that's being offered by the Suquamish tribe, and it's called the Port Madison Dialogues, and it starts on Thursday, September 23rd. More information on how to sign up you will find in your beacon. This is a time to spend a minute on the fact that our faith community is sustained by the generosity of our members. Your contribution will nourish the spiritual growth of our community through weekly worship and ongoing programs that cultivate connection, belonging, sharing, and caring. Included in the video description and displayed on the screen is information to make a contribution to Cedars through our PayPal account. Please take time now or later in the service to make a contribution. Your gifts are greatly appreciated. We want to talk about what kind of community we are. Cedars is committed to being a welcoming and inclusive community. In all the beauty of languages, cultures, and skin tones that come together in your uniqueness, we welcome you. In all the ways you experience and express gender, in the beauty of who and how you love, we welcome you. With the religious and ethical traditions that inform your spiritual life, we welcome you. When you come, whether you come feeling whole or broken or somewhere in between, we do welcome you. No matter how long you've been away or how soon you will return, we welcome you. You are invited to join us today and always with an open mind, a loving heart, and willing hands. We welcome you today and always. Today, the reflection is about happiness. Reverend Aikman will be helping us discover just what leads us to feeling happy. Just one thing? I will take a few minutes to share my views. First off, our world feels more crazy by the minute. Interesting times, as the Chinese would say. Not just the pandemic, the discord in our politics, the threats to our democracy, the worries about our technology. No, it's the intensity and velocity of change and the realization that so much we were taught, so much history has been so incomplete or just wrong, and that we are living with so many loud, diverse voices, beliefs, ideas. It's just so hard to keep up, to reflect, to integrate it all. And most important of all, how do we save our planet, our beloved planet? With all that in mind, I find that there are certain beliefs that hold me together. I believe in loving kindness, in family, in friendship, in community, in justice, in nature, and the planet. And I turn to all the things that I'm so grateful for. The beauty of nature, feeding the birds and squirrels, grandchildren coming to visit, a laugh with friends, creating beauty with words and color, finding some small thing I can do to help our community and our planet, and feeling that gratitude even in the hardest times. In fact, it is gratitude that fills me with hope and possibility. So let us light the chalice in honor of gratitude and love. Thank you.
As we come together to worship, we remind ourselves to treat each other kindly, as we are all one family, to take good care of the earth because it is our home, and to live lives full of love and goodness because that is how we can all become the best that we can be.
into this special time, this sacred communal time, when we gather to honor and hold up our highest ideals, to remember our radical connection to all that is, to rest into a profound awareness that we are enough, that we are loved, that we can make a difference in the world just by living from a place of love and generosity of spirit. Come, let us worship together. For our prayer time, this poem by the Tibetan Buddhist teacher Ven Gandun Rinpoche. Happiness cannot be found through great effort and willpower, but is already present in relaxation and letting go. Don't strain yourself. There is nothing to do. Whatever arises in the mind has no real importance at all, because it has no reality whatsoever. Don't become attached to it and pass judgment upon it. Let the entire game happen on its own, springing up and falling back like waves, without changing or manipulating anything, and everything vanishes and reappears magically without end. Only our searching for happiness prevents us from seeing it. It's like a rainbow which you pursue without ever catching. Although it does not exist, it has always been there and accompanies you every instant. Don't believe in the reality of good and bad experiences. They are like rainbows in the sky. Wanting to grasp what cannot be grasped, you exhaust yourself in vain. As soon as you open and relax this grasping, space is there, open, inviting, and comfortable. So make use of this spaciousness, this freedom, and natural ease. Don't search any further. Don't go into the tangled jungle looking for the great elephant who is already quietly at home. Nothing to do, nothing to force, nothing to want, and everything happens by itself.
Voice still and small, deep inside all, I hear you call, singing in dark and rain, sorrow and pain, still you remain, singing. Calming my fears, quenching my tears, through all the years, singing. Voice still and small, deep inside all, I hear you call, singing in dark and rain, sorrow and pain, still you remain, singing, calming my fears, quenching my tears, through all the years, singing.
Our reading is a poem by Jane Kenyon called Happiness. There's just no accounting for happiness or the way it turns up, like a prodigal who comes back to the dust at your feet, having squandered a fortune far away. And how can you not forgive? You make a feast in honor of what was lost and take from its place the finest garment which you saved for an occasion you could not imagine, and you weep night and day to know that you were not abandoned, that happiness saved its most extreme form for you alone. No, happiness is the uncle you never knew about, who flies a single-engine plane onto the grassy landing strip, hitchhikes into town, and inquires at every door until he finds you asleep mid-afternoon, as you so often are during the unmerciful hours of your despair. It comes to the monk in his cell. It comes to the woman sweeping the street with a birch broom, to the child whose mother has passed out from drink. It comes to the lover, to the dog chewing a sock, to the pusher, to the basket maker, and to the clerk stacking cans of carrots in the night. It even comes to the boulder in the perpetual shade of pine barrens, to rain falling on the open sea, to the wine glass, weary of holding the wine. So ends the reading. I found a newspaper article when I was traveling on a train in the north of England quite a few years ago that made a big impression on me. The article was called "The Only Thing Necessary for Happiness." I carefully tore the article out and stashed it carefully in my travel bag. And now it is long gone, and I no longer have any recollection of its wisdom, just that title. So this week I searched for it on Google. The Only Thing Necessary for Happiness. And I didn't find it. Though I did find a post headed, "Why Every Man Should Try an Older Woman at Least Once." I suppose that might bring happiness for a little while to at least one of the parties, but I didn't read the article to find out. The first question when considering happiness might be, how important is happiness? Well, our founding fathers certainly seem to have thought it was important. The pursuit of happiness is right up there with life and liberty in the Declaration of Independence as an unalienable right. But those words, the pursuit of happiness, don't mean quite the same thing today as they did in 1776. Happiness in those days didn't refer to a subjective emotional state. It meant prosperity, or perhaps more accurately, well-being. It included the right to meet physical needs, but it also included a significant moral and religious dimension. And pursuit had a particular meaning in the 1770s. We generally use the word today to mean chasing after or hunting for, but there's a secondary meaning of pursuit. We don't as often use this sense of the word, it remains in use when referring, for example, to the pursuit of medicine. In this sense, pursuit means occupation or practice or vocation. So the pursuit of happiness might mean something like occupying one's life with the activities that provide for overall well-being. This certainly includes a right to material things, but it goes beyond that to include our spiritual and moral condition. It seems clear that in the early days of our republic, happiness was not the foremost value or the goal after which everyone quested. Being good, being holy, was far more important. Our Unitarian ancestors thought that doing one's duty and improving one's character were far more important than personal happiness. But the Universalists, on the other hand, those hard-working farmers who became convinced of the universality of God's love and forgiveness, the Universalists believed that God was bent on happifying the human race. Their duty as Universalists was to spread that joyful word: hell doesn't exist, God loves you unconditionally, there's nothing you can do to distance yourself from that huge, adoring, boundless love, that unending wellspring of love. Be happified, my friends. Well, the trouble is, of course, that you can get everything all set for happiness. You can work for years to get to that happy place, and when you're there, it can all be ruined by one thing or another, or when achieved through a psychological process known as hedonic adaptation, its ability to happify you slowly but surely fades. The pursuit of happiness has been, for me, a frustrating experience, compounded by the fact that it has always seemed to me that achieving happiness was the goal of human existence, and thus when I was not happy, I was not only blue, but also a failure. Was I mistaken? Is happiness the goal of human existence? This is a quote from one of my favorite spiritual classics, The Healer of Shattered Hearts, A Jewish View of God, by Rabbi David Wolpe. Choose life is a biblical directive. Be happy is not. Happiness can be an idol, too, like all things that human beings worship and seek that are not divine. Holiness is a greater ideal by far than happiness because it embraces struggle and sees all things, achievement, aspiration, even love, as part of the moral drama of the world, and not as life's end or sole reason for being. Holiness is greater than happiness because it is never achieved. It is ever in process, an elusive goal just beyond our reach. Judaism's counsel is clear. Lay the maddening illusion of happiness to one side and seek instead to emulate that highest prophetic ideal, to do justice, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with God. So in Judaism, happiness is secondary to holiness. Are we mistaken if we think happiness is the most important thing in life? Should we be focusing on other things? I'm sure many of you have seen the movie Saving Private Ryan. A small band of American soldiers is sent to save this private who is trapped behind enemy lines in France. Some of them die in the attempt, but Ryan is saved and he survives. And as an old man, he makes a pilgrimage to the grave of one of the men who died so that he, Ryan, could live. Ryan stands at the grave and contemplates the sacrifices that were made for him and wonders if he is worthy of them. His wife comes up to comfort him, and he asks her with sudden urgency, "Have I been a good man? Have I lived a good life?" She reassures him that yes, he has been a good man. I found myself wondering later, what were some other possible questions that Ryan might have asked? One possible question would have been, have I been a happy person? Have I lived a happy life? But virtue, goodness, was more important to him as he assessed his life. In the latter years of our lives, if we add up the things that have made our lives worthwhile, there will probably be an assortment of things. Contributions that we've made, relationships we have formed, public achievements, and private satisfactions that will affect our self-assessment. But also there will be the question of happiness. Were we happy? Did we experience pleasure and delight and joy and ecstasy, contentment and well-being? There's another teaching in Judaism that when we die, we will have to make an accounting not only of all the commandments we didn't obey, but also for all the permitted pleasures and delights that we did not take advantage of when we were alive. I know that if I did a life review today, I would ask myself why I didn't go swimming in the ocean more often. So maybe this is the time to start remedying that. What then is the one thing necessary for happiness? The last novel written by the Canadian writer Carol Shields is called Unless. It's about a 45-year-old writer named Rita who is married and has 3 children. Her oldest daughter, Nora, has had some sort of inexplicable breakdown, and she runs off to live on the street in Toronto, where she sits all day holding up a sign that says simply, goodness. The daughter won't speak to or even look at anyone, and she sleeps in a homeless shelter. The family carries on a semblance of normal life while dealing with this inexplicable mystery at the heart of their life together. As Rita goes through her everyday life, caring for her other 2 teenage daughters, loving her husband, writing a book, visiting friends, her otherwise happy existence is so stained by this frustrating mystery that it colors everything she normally would take pleasure and satisfaction in. Nostalgically, she keeps remembering a book tour she went on 2 years before to promote one of her previous novels, a book tour that irritated her at the time, but which she now looks back on with great nostalgia because it was a time before her daughter went to live on the streets. It was a time when she was happy without knowing it. Carol Shields died shortly after finishing writing this novel. She knew that she was very sick, and I wonder if her protagonist's pain over the loss of her daughter was really about Carol Shields' own struggle with her terminal illness, her awareness of how limited her time on earth was, her own attempts to live a normal life, to create something beautiful, even as her own life was tainted by this specter of mortality. How then are we to be happy, experience happiness in this flawed and frustrating and all too brief mortal life? A life that, due to the pandemic in which we still find ourselves, seems all the more fragile and precious. Well, here is my humble recipe for the only thing necessary for happiness. Rejoice in what is here. That's not wildly poetic or anything, but it's proved to be so meaningful and helpful that I painted it and have it on the wall in my study to remind me. Rejoice in what is here. I thought of that a couple of mornings ago while I was making breakfast for myself and feeling grouchy and stuck and envious and resentful. And I thought of how wonderful being in my own kitchen feels when I've returned from a long journey. How magical it feels to be able to sleep in my own bed and make my own weird oatmeal and egg concoction after I've been eating hotel breakfasts. This awareness of how magical my ordinary life seems when I've been away from it helped me rejoice in what was right around me. Rejoicing in what is here can also take the form of compassion for everyone, including your future or past self, who would be so glad to experience your day today. Rejoicing in what is here can also take the form of simple, uncomplicated gratitude. Thank you. Thank you. Something that makes it hard for us to become quiet enough to rejoice in what is here, to open ourselves to the unending wellspring of love, is our fear, I believe, our fear of sadness. When we are quiet and still, sadness often comes up. If we're afraid of it, we'll instantly create some sort of noise to avoid having to experience it. But you know what our sadness needs? All it needs is attention. And when it's attended to, listened to, felt, it will be satisfied, and the love can be free to come through. So I might expand the effectiveness of rejoice in what is here by repeating to myself, I open my heart and focus my mind. I focus my mind gently but firmly on this moment, what my hands are feeling, what the air smells like, what my muscles are doing, what my mind is doing, what my friend is saying to me, what precise colors these flowers are now in this moment. Another thing that can rob us of happiness is guilt. Oh, you know what I'm talking about. The guilt that keeps us always feeling we need to be doing something else or wishing we could fix things we messed up in the past. Guilt, a totally useless emotion, pulls us out of this moment and back into unresolved conflicts. Oh, you can do therapy and read books about guilt, but I think the bottom line is we live in a guilt-ridden society. There's no way around it. It's like the water a fish swims in, and the only way to deal with it is to say, hi, guilt, I'll pay attention to you later. Right now I'm concentrating on this, whatever it is, and then gently come back to this moment and see what you can rejoice about right here and now. The worst thing is to feel guilty for feeling happy or for not feeling happy. But as Jane Kenyon says in her wonderful poem, there's just no accounting for happiness. It does seem to come wherever and whenever it wants to. It seems to be as unpredictable as the wind. It comes to the monk in his cell. It comes to the woman sweeping the street with a birch broom, to the child whose mother has passed out from drink. If we are close to someone who is suffering from some misfortune, whether financial or health or relational, it's hard to let ourselves experience happiness. Walking on our own two strong legs out of the hospital room where our friend lies helpless, how dare we feel happy? Yet just as nothing is taken away from the atmosphere by our enjoyment of the breeze on our cheeks, nothing is taken away from that great infinite source of joy and love by the fact that we are happy. Being unhappy isn't going to help our sick friend or the refugees or the prisoners. Sitting on your butt isn't going to help them either, of course, and you should do whatever you feel called to do, visit, volunteer, send a letter or a donation. But you don't need to be unhappy while you're doing it. That's not going to help anyone at all. In Carol Shields' novel, Rita and her husband and other two daughters go to visit the homeless shelter, which is run by volunteers from the Episcopal Church. This is where Nora sleeps at night. Despairing and disbelieving that Nora would have chosen to live here instead of at their own cozy home, the family are given a tour of the facility. In the basement was the dining hall and kitchen, where 4 women were gathered around an industrial wood and steel table, collaborating on a list of some kind. They looked hearty, cheerful, plain, full of ease, and each wore a black barbecue apron upon which was printed the word promise. Friends, don't feel guilty for being happy. You deserve as much as anyone else to have a share of the world's happiness, the promise of the world. The fount of happiness is not going to be diminished by your having your fill of it, by being as you do your work or your play in the world, hearty, cheerful, plain, and full of ease. It may be that the one thing necessary for happiness is to just let yourself be happy. Get out of the way of happiness and let it in, like the long-lost uncle who's landed on the grassy landing strip just outside your town. I believe it's our natural state. It's what we are designed for. It's what the divine wants for us. We need to invite it to come on in and sit down and put its feet up. All is yours already. Don't search any further. Don't go into the tangled jungle looking for the elephant who is already quietly at home. May you rejoice in what is here, and may you be richly blessed. Amen.
Love will guide us, peace has tried us, hope inside us will lead the way on the road from creed to king. Love will guide us through the hot night. If you cannot sing like angels, if you cannot speak before thousands, you can give from deep within you. You can change the world with your love. Love will guide us, peace has tried us, hope inside us will lead the way on the road from greed to giving. Love will guide us through the hot night.
We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
Friends, may you be richly blessed with ease, with love, with beauty. May this week bring many lovely gifts to you, and may you savor them deeply and share them with an open heart. So may it be. Amen.